Welcome back to another edition of Live Fully. I am your host, Naketa Deepen. Always excited to be here with you. For those of you who are brand new, right here on this LinkedIn live stream that also simulcasts to Twitter, because we like Twitter too. For right now, we like it for right now. We'll talk about that later on another platform. For those of you who are brand new, I am a balance and relationship advisor, and I am serving our power couples and our potent humans self actualize their wholeness. That is ultimately what I do through our company, Think Pro Balance and Relationship Management Institute. Say that 5 times fast. It's a whole mouthful, where we're building stronger families by helping them become intentionally selfish. I know it's a whole thing. We can talk about it another time, or you could go listen to 180 plus episodes of the Balance Boldly podcast. I talk about it there all the time with amazing people like our guest, Andre Smith, who is phenomenal, and he is breaking barriers in this relationship space because he is helping you nudge your way to your breakthrough so you can feel whole, mentally well, spiritually well, and making sure that you can do it in your own time with these beautiful nudges in a way that you can digest. Andre, welcome to Live Fully, and tell everyone how you're doing today.
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I really have enjoyed the last, I feel like 8 months that we've got a chance to know each other. So I'm happy that we're going to continue to get a chance to work together even more in the coming new year.
Absolutely. You know you're my new person. Like I really love what you're doing in the world and the way that you're doing it.
Thank
Especially,
you.
I'm a little biased because the name of your program, your technology is also a similar name to one of my favorite people, one of my goddaughters, Chosen. You just spell it a little different.
Nice, nice.
Right?
That
It's
well, that's now my new favorite relative of yours.
exactly. And she's a beast. She's amazing. High schooler and a total amazing beast. But you are
Awesome.
chosen.io. Tell everyone a little bit about that.
Yeah, so chosen.io came from just my own growth and my personal development
Yeah.
to my journey to therapy. And it just wasn't a part of the language at our kitchen table. And so I was like, it was really hard for me to work with some of the other technologies because it was like I couldn't use it unless I was ready for therapy.
Mm,
But therapy just wasn't a part of conversations at our dinner table. And so, like, I would have a mentor, I would have a life coach, I get a business coach, I get a trainer, but the word therapy never was a part of that
yeah.
dialogue. So it took me till my 30s to just be comfortable with the idea of therapy. And so, really, Chosen was a way of like, how do we meet people where they're at?
Yeah.
We've invested $1 billion in venture capital in therapy over the past decade, but we've only gone from serving 42% of the need to 47%. And so
Mm,
it's like most of my life has been spent as part of that 53% of people not receiving care, and not because I wasn't trying to better myself, but just, the idea of therapy was just intimidating.
yeah. Why do you think that is? Especially when you think about the people that you're serving through chosen.io and the conversations that you're having behind the scenes as you're building out this massive platform to really help that other 53 plus percent of people. Why do you think therapy isn't reaching them in the traditional sense?
I mean, I feel like a lot of the platforms are using a lot of jargon. And
Mm,
so if you're not comfortable with the jargon or you've never heard of that jargon before, then it's just going to be like, I don't know anything about that. And we aren't necessarily comfortable doing things that we know nothing about.
true.
And so it really doesn't meet people where they're at.
Hmm.
But if you say, like, oh, do you want to be a better version of yourself tomorrow than you are today? Most people would be like, yeah, like
Yeah.
unless they're in depression, most people want to be a little better tomorrow than they are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand what you're saying too about the lay language that's necessary. So you've talked to me quite a few times. So you know I am versatile with going from the informal and the formal because my clinical hat is always on. Even though I don't serve our clients as a clinician, I still use those clinical tools and I still keep all of those licenses because blood, sweat, tears. all of that poured into
Absolutely.
it, right?
you
Like,
you
all,
done
all of that.
you done paid for it, so you might as well maintain it.
That's right, all of that. But I do catch myself speaking in acronyms often, and I have to
Right.
remind myself, as brilliant as other people are too, if you're not specific to this industry, you may not necessarily know what some of those terms are, or the shorthand version of a certain word or diagnosis or anything is. And although it can come in handy when you're in the right room, when you're trying to get the 53% of people to understand the benefit of why having a safe space, of why being in a place with someone who's unbiased, who's not siding with your mama or your papa because they don't know neither one of y'all, right? Like,
Right.
who's in this, it's
Exactly.
very helpful. What I
Yeah.
appreciate are the challenges that you guys create to really put out there to people that there's a new way that they can do it. Like, just let me meet you where you are. Let's do something for 5 days. Let's do something for 7 days. Like, let's see if I can nudge you to that next milestone of awareness, of self awareness, and where you could do something different. You did I think it was a love day challenge earlier this year. Was that one, a 7 day
Yeah, yeah.
challenge?
For Valentine's Day, we did a 7 day love challenge, and so every day, either as an individual or as a couple, you both would take a quiz, and it would give you personalized feedback. And so the challenges really came from even after I read a good book or I had a good
Mhm.
therapy session,
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue of how to apply it in my daily life.
Mm,
And so the challenge was a way of how do we take information that you've already learned or been exposed to, but how do we actually show you how to apply it in your daily life? Because at the end of the day, it's great to have read a good book and to check it off your list to be able to talk about it in a dinner party. But
yeah.
then how do you actually live it in your daily life? And so that's why I was really excited about your book, Selfish, is so that we could actually have a chance to teach people how to actually implement it into their life.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, because from reading Selfish, it's a personal transformation and survivor memoir. It's not a how to book, but there are so many how to's in there, enveloped in my very honest and raw stories of what was
Right.
happening and transparent in my life that allowed me to get to the space of what I say is living in that space of and so I could live fully, which ultimately is how I help other people do the same thing. And taking
Yeah.
those metaphors, those analogies from which are real to my life, but are metaphors and analogies for other people and making them tangible is very sexy, Andre.
Thank you, thank you. How did you how many times do you feel like you transitioned,
Mm.
throughout those that story in those transformations that you were talking about in the book? Like, what was the time span there?
Woo. Well, the book took me 8.5 years to write because that's
Ooh,
how deep it
that's
was.
how many
Like,
lessons in
yeah, yes.
that you had to learn?
Yeah, it was 8.5 years of me
Wow.
being brave enough and bold enough to open up those places that I thought were healed, because not everything was healed. Some was just scarred or keloid over. If you're African
Mm,
American or a person of color listening to this, you know what a keloid is, when our
right,
skin heals in a different way. And it wasn't necessarily things that had been nourished completely and handled well, but as a Olympian compartmentalizer, because that is definitely a part of my old hat. I could deal with something really traumatic and stuff it down and keep going and show up at work and show up in, my master's or my doctorate program, or show up at home or show up with the kids, and no one would know that anything had happened because Olympian compartmentalizer. But I had to go into those compartments, open up that Pandora's box, unlock all of those tiny rooms in my subconscious, and look at what were the roots of some of the pain that I caused myself because I didn't necessarily heal from things. I just stuffed and stuffed and stuffed and kept moving, because that's what we do. We're ambitious. We keep moving. We don't got time for tears. We ain't got time for pain, right? I
that's
would,
right,
right? I would joke with people and say, "I'm a thug. I don't cry. That's just liquid joy." Like, like now I can
right,
embrace the reality that the tears are helpful, that they're healing. And this is
yeah,
all said in those 8.5 years of writing it. I was already a clinician. I was already serving well over 10,000 families. I was a sharp
wow,
weapon full of skill, but I hadn't
right,
embodied a lot of those
mm,
lessons completely. I had started the process,
Right.
3+ years of therapy, coaching, advisors, mentors, spiritual counseling, right? Like I had
Yeah.
definitely done a lot of work, but just going through the motions is not the same as embodying the lessons to your point. And part of
Right.
it for me, honestly, was giving myself permission to pause and slow down and receive the information instead of just hearing it like, oh, I know, because,
Right.
you
Like
know,
it's a test. Like, oh, I know the
yes,
right answers,
yeah,
but it's how are you showing up for other people in your life? How are you
absolutely.
communicating? How they need to show up for you?
Yeah.
And really until like you go through that healing process, it's really hard
Mhm.
to be able to do that.
Yeah, and you can be really good, but it's hard to be great if you haven't done the work. So I do
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of good therapists, coaches, advisors, mentors, whatever the name, consultants, whatever the names are, the helpers out here, including myself,
Yeah.
are using these days. But it's really hard to be great if you haven't done your own personal development work. It's not optional. And for
Yeah.
me, because I was always, validated, patted on the back by the world for being booked and busy, whether that was in my career or when I transitioned to an entrepreneur, we celebrate the busy. We celebrate the doers. We celebrate all of the things that look like they're Instagram worthy, for lack of a better, but we're not necessarily willing to slow down and say, you know what? You're still grieving the loss of that person. You're still grieving the loss of yourself. You thought you would be this by this age, by this date, by this time. Did you really acknowledge the fact that you had these other accomplishments that can help transfer you into this other stage of life? You yourself went through whatever go through and grow through you did that made you say, wait a minute, there's another part of this world that needs me in a different way than I probably would have ever considered. I'm sure you ain't grow up thinking that you was going to build out chosen.io, right? That came
No.
from your healing process, which is such a
Yeah.
gift to the world, but you had to slow down to even see that there was a need.
Yeah, yeah, I really did. It was funny, like literally, it was like a couple of weeks ago, and me and a sibling were having a conversation, and he was clearly upset about the
Mhm.
conversation that was going on. But I was in that same place like 7 years ago,
Mhm.
um, and so it was just like, oh, this is what it feels like to be
Yeah.
healed. Like the
Yeah.
same situation that upset me 7 years ago, that like
Mhm.
really messed up my whole week.
Yes.
I was able to reflect and say, oh, okay, this is what it's like to be on the other side of healing on
Yeah.
this particular situation. And of course, like there's still other situations that I need growth and healing on,
Yeah.
but it was good to realize like, oh, okay, this one had been healed.
Yeah, that perspective shift that you were able to receive for yourself and know that you had journeyed probably further than you ever looked at because you didn't
Yeah.
have a anchor to compare it to, because we
Right.
we get lost in our memories, right? Like you're like, well, I wasn't that bad, or woo, I was so much worse than maybe you really were in that
Right.
space in your life. And then seeing someone else, especially someone close to you like a sibling, where you're like, I empathize on a level,
Right.
sister or brother, whoever, that I would have never thought I could be on this side of the table and hear you with my heart and not just my
Right.
head, and not shame you or blame you or judge you, because I've been through it and I know you can get to the other side, which is why, again, I really value that you've created technology that can amplify with the good and great therapists and coaches and mentors and advisors and all of us are out here doing, because sometimes people need something that they can access right now, that they can't
Yeah.
wait to book an appointment, that they need in a way that they can digest. Like, I can't always get on the phone with someone. I can't always have a virtual, as I call them, virtual tea call on Zoom or Skype or whatever, but a lovely text message that's just reminded me of how powerful I am, of
Yeah.
confirming that I'm needed in the world and I'm already enough. Those things that I know chosen.io does are necessary.
Yeah, no, you're right, because there's no way that you can be in a million homes across the globe at one time,
Right.
but somebody out there needs you. That's
Yeah.
a part of the 53%
Yeah.
that would not access you in a traditional way.
Yeah.
And so how do we those 53% of people still deserve care, even
Mhm.
if maybe they don't want the jargon and the
Mhm.
abbreviations
Yeah.
that the people that are very comfortable and really gun ho and excited about therapy can
Mhm.
talk about. Like that makes them feel good, but it is intimidating for other people that are still on that journey there, and we can just as a society do better about meeting people where they're at.
Mm, that's what I'm talking about. Where can people get access to you and to chosen.io, to whether they're on the hey, I want to invest in this side, like I want to help this get to even more people, because there's the 53%, but there's also that 47 that need a little bit of extra supplemental support, or they're on the
Yeah.
side of like, I need to sign up right now and I need that. Hello, when's the next challenge? Like, where can they go to get all
Right.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that we will send out the link for your book challenge here in the next 48 hours. We'll send it out on LinkedIn and all the socials. But on Twitter, you can find me at Andre Chosen, and it's chosen without the E. And on the website, chosen.io, you can immediately get started, choose what relationship you want to work on and what three goals that you have for that particular relationship goal. And so yeah, those are the three places, and of course, you can reach me on LinkedIn as well.
That's perfect. Three places to find Andre Smith and three goals. So you got to narrow it down, people. It can't be 25 things. Let's get it succinct.
You gotta have we all need a little focus in our life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be important too, because, the neuroscience of the brain tells us that we have to bring it in before we can expand and really focus. So make sure that you guys are really being honest with yourself of what matters the most to you, like what relationships matter, who, starting with yourself, of course. But who do you really need to repair those relationships with, and where do you need more support around? It can't be all 100 people, because if you got 100 people in your circle, that's a whole nother question, right? Like,
That's
we need to do
that's
some
something else we need to talk about. That's a whole lot of surface level relationships going on. And also we're not static in our goals. So, every 30 days you can change up what you're working on. We
Yeah,
don't go to the gym and only work on, one form of the body for a whole year. Like,
yeah.
you're gonna want to work on different things. And so for every 30 days you can change up that goal.
Oh, that is perfect. Andre, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your message, your mission, and all that you are doing to literally nudge people forward so they can live fully.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. I will see you in a few more weeks. If you are new to this, we come somewhere between the first and the third Wednesday of every month at 12 p.m. noon Eastern Standard Time. And you can always catch the replays right here and on YouTube. All the links you need will be below, and I will see you on the other side.